You're listening to the Podcast Detroit Network. Visit www.podcastdetroit.com for more information.
(1935), the Lions win the NFL championship. The Detroit Tigers take the World Series. The Red Wings bring home Lord Stanley's Cup. Joe Louis begins his rise to world domination. This transforms the Motor City into Detroit, City of Champions.
Game on, Detroit City of Champions, the podcast. I'm Jamie Flanagan.
Charles Avison.
That cat right there wrote a trilogy of books called Detroit City of Champions. And I met him at an art fair, and he just went on about this book, and he was so excited about it. And then Matthew and I launched these podcast studios, and I'm like, you know who's got to tell a story? I got to get Charles Avison in here to tell his story about Detroit City of Champions. And as Charles started unfolding his story to me, he had these the wandering tales of a story.
I call it Tales of a Traveling Storyteller.
Tales of a Traveling Storyteller, and the interesting people he's met along the way while collecting this story. And Charles, today once again it's part 2 of many.
It's an undefined number of parts for this particular show because one of the people that we talk about in the Tales of a Traveling, it's actually before the Lions chapter is Tom Eurich, who we have for
Tom. Thanks for coming back.
Special guest in the show.
Because you're just a wealth of knowledge and connections in the story because you got to meet. You had the distinct privilege of meeting some of these guys, some of these Iron Men.
Well, yes, the Lions from 35 and also Charlie Gehringer. I was speaking earlier before we went on the air that when I got involved in 1985, there was 139 champions all combined in the
still
series
living
of the book.
Still living, right? Yeah.
Still living. And then when I got in at 50 years late, there was only 17 left.
Yep.
And consequently, then I went to work to find them and the rest is history.
The thing that me and Tom connected at one point. We talked about how me and Tom met. In fact, I had almost forgotten how we'd connect. I mean, I remember where we had met. You know, we met at the Coney Island that one time. We had a great conversation. One of the coolest things in the world, at least cool to me as a City of Champions junkie, is the fact that they had this. It was the Lions Golden Huddle in 1985,
right?
Which was a celebration of that 1935 championship, and Tom was there, and Tom recorded it. Tom interviewed these guys. There's a lot of stuff that he talked to about these guys that was not recorded, and that's why one of the many reasons we bring him on the show. I mean. Is to really dive into his brain and extract as much information as we can about, especially that Golden Huddle.
And we're going to try to bring more of those clips in
absolutely.
In the coming weeks.
Yep. In the coming weeks, we're going to actually play some of the audio, some of the interview questions, and but also Tom has been really closely. Tom's done a ton of work down in Portsmouth. He's gone down there. He's made quite a few friends down there.
Sure. And it's so the Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants. I mean, the Tales of the Wandering
Tales of a Traveling Storyteller.
That.
You're 5% close, I guess.
Something like that.
Yeah, I think you got the right on that entire statement. Wow,
we're
butchered
live, folks.
it. Yeah,
but there's yet another person that we were going to.
Here's the thing: I'll lead up to is the idea that that last week we were going back and forth talking about our favorite players. And we weren't talking about like Dutch Clark because everybody's favorite's Dutch Clark. I mean, he's the Hall of Fame. He's the charter member of the Hall of Fame for the Lions. And then Tom mentioned Ernie Cadell, and then I went off on this big thing about Glenn Presnell being my favorite player, right? And so, anyways, that got Tom to talking to a few of his Portsmouth buddies, and actually we want to bring out our second special guest today, our special guest, Will Mault. We got him. It's just Tom's. He's just and the reason.
Hey.
How you doing, Will?
Hey, Tom, man.
So
it's
we want to
bring here, Charles.
Yeah, we want to kind of surprise Tom with Will here, and this is Will. Not only is he coming in from Zoom, and he's in Portsmouth, right? If I'm not mistaken, right, Will? You're living here.
I am in Portsmouth.
He lives in Portsmouth. He's broadcasting from Portsmouth, and he was actually Glenn Presnell's neighbor for how many years, Will?
Several years. I don't know. Most of my life, I grew up here. Knowing about Glenn all my life. Glenn was friends with everybody.
So and Will is knows everything. He's friends with it. He's friends with Glenn was no he was not shy about talking about his time as a Portsmouth Spartan or, as I'm sure, as a Detroit Lion.
No, and his name was Presnell, and his nickname was the Press because he loved the press. And I always say before Deion Sanders in prime time, there was the Press, Glenn Presnell.
Oh, yeah. And you're leading right up. You're leading up to where I want to go with this entire, eventually with this show, hopefully, is the versatility of Glenn Presnell, which really was – he was he was excellent at pretty much everything he did. Offense, defense, kicking, field goals. He was a tremendous athlete.
Oh, above all, he was a class individual. That man had as much class as any man I've ever met in my life. He was just a classy individual.
Excellent. Yeah, it's Tom briefly. Press was at but momentarily. Didn't you say he was ill or something?
Well, when Abe Kushner took me over, Glenn was at the table, and he halfway after the event he left. He was not feeling well, and I was very sorry that I didn't get a chance to interview him because he introduced the colors to the Detroit Lions, the Honolulu Blue, up in the Fisher Building in Richard's office.
Yep.
And I would have loved to have got him, but I didn't.
Yeah, no, but so we got a supplementary source here with Will Mault, who the eyewitness to my favorite. Besides again, and you say Dutch Clark is your favorite. He's just you got to sort of have Dutch as your favorite, but like I say, for me, it's like Glenn Presnell is I said it last week in the show. He was just we talked about how Press even before he even came to Portsmouth, he played for the Ironton Tanks. And I was saying last week, I'm like, if you really wanted to get us some real football history, like some real leather helmet, football history, that you look into the Ironton Tanks, because and then Presnell, I was actually kind of making sure I have a few notes on him today for it. And last week I said I think he beat the Chicago Bears. I forgot if it was the Bears or the Giants that he beat. Well, he beat both of them. So while he was with the Ironton Tanks in 1930. The Ironton Tanks beat both the New York Giants and the Chicago Bears in the same season. And this is supposedly a semi-pro team. So, this is, Presnell was the number one guy. So that's what I mean.
And I don't mean to interrupt, but when he was in college, when he was in college, they say he single-handedly defeated the Four Horsemen.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. And he was an All-American in 1927 with the University of Nebraska. So this is he was born in Nebraska, All-American at Nebraska, which is just one of the all-time great, college football teams. And so, he's one of the first, great, Nebraska Cornhuskers. And so, it's you get a Cornhusker All-American on your team, but it's just such a great thing. He comes to the Ironton Tanks, and they beat the, two NFL teams. And I was looking at my own books real quick, doing a little refresher, some of the stuff with the Presnell. And he said that he joined the he actually was offered by several different NFL teams, including the New York Giants. And he actually chose Ironton because they guaranteed him a job as a science teacher.
Oh, okay.
And so as a science teacher, he actually said, there's a quote in the book, in the third book I have, where he actually says, the idea was that I was getting paid more as a combined teacher / football player than I was as just a football player.
Wow.
And the other thing too is if my football career failed, then I knew I could fall back on being a science teacher, as a job for the rest of my life type of a situation. So he actually chose the Ironton Tanks over the NFL, and then eventually chose the NFL.
I'm a little bit like Tom Eurich. I get a little teary-eyed every once in a while, but Glenn came to my house and played with my children. My children are 31 and 30 now. They were probably 2 or 3, and he came to the house and held their hands and played with them when they were little. How many professional athletes?
That's awesome. Did he throw the football around the yard or anything with him?
Yeah, I had the football out here earlier. He signed for me.
Oh, nice.
And I took it out of its case. And the odor was terrible. I had to put it out.
Oh, geez. Well, do you have it on you? I mean, you can hold it up to the camera and shows what you if you got it.
Or is it that bad? My son-in-law to get it now.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah.
In the meantime, I wanted to read a quote because I've got a quote from Glenn Presnell's mouth about his victory when he was on the Ironton Tanks, about how they beat the Giants and Bears. And it's not too long, but I think it's a thrilling quote, and I thought it was a great opportunity to show, for one thing, to bring a little life back into Glenn's own, his own words, himself speaking, and also to talk about, just how cool these two victories were. So this is from my third book here, and it's and the quote comes from another book called "What a Game They Played," which is a great football early 30s football book. So this is Presnell talking about his two victories over those two NFL teams with the Irons and Tanks in 1930. So when I played with the Tanks, we beat the New York Giants 13-12 in 1930. The Giants had a fine team that year. Benny Friedman was their quarterback, and he was the best passer in the NFL. They also had Steve Owen in the line and his brother Bill, and they had Red Bagro at an end. They were beating us 12-6 with only a short time to go in the game. I was playing safety at the time, and we held them back in their own territory and forced them to punt. I caught the punt, it was a short one, and ran it out of bounds to stop the clock. I asked the timekeeper, the referee, how much time there was left to play. They kept the time on the field in those days. The referee had a stopwatch, no electric scoreboards. Anyway, he looked at his watch and said, "Looks like you got about 3 seconds left." I went back to the huddle and called a forward pass play. The Giants rushed me real hard, and I was trapped in the backfield, but somehow I was able to sprint out of it. I ran across the field with the Giants everywhere chasing me. Well, their backs on defense thought at this point I was running the ball, so they relaxed their pass coverage and came up to tackle me. I spotted this little halfback we had by the name of Gene Alford standing down in the end zone, frantically waving his arms, and so I just flipped the ball to him, about 30 or 40 yards, and he caught it. We kicked the extra point and beat them 13-12. And it was the New York Giants team that had gone 13-4 in the NFL that year. So that's the New York Giants section. So here's the Chicago Bears one is a little bit shorter. So we played the Bears shortly after, and they had Red Grange and Bronco Nagurski. Anyway, as good as the Bears were, and they were very good, we beat them too, 26-13. Everything seemed to go right for me that day. I remember breaking off tackle on one run and going 88 yards for a touchdown, and I got 2 touchdown passes that day as well. The reason we played so hard in that game, I truly believe, is because we were very scared, especially of Nagurski, who everyone had heard all the war stories about. We didn't want to get annihilated, and as a result, we really got keyed up for the game. On the other hand, the Bears figured this little team from Ironton would be a real soft touch, and they consequently didn't get up for the game.
Wow.
So the first game, like it's a last second touchdown by Presnell. In the second one, he ran for a touchdown, threw for 2. He's a stud, man.
So
I love Detroit. I've visited Detroit many times, but Glenn talked to me about the championship game in 32 when the Spartans played the Bears, and he claimed he had a play called in the huddle, and the Spartans had ran it the way he wanted. The Spartans would have won that game.
Man. We did an entire show in the 1930, like a show and a half on the 32 championship that inside the Chicago Stadium.
I don't know if you can see one of my most prized possessions, but there it is.
Yeah, we can see you. Tom's got a clap over here for you. That's awesome.
Can I ask Will a question?
Yeah, absolutely, Tom. Yeah.
Will, how did you meet Glenn?
He was his neighbor.
Oh, he was the neighbor.
Yeah, he was his neighbor.
He was the neighbor, meaning he lived in Ironton. He actually, I got a letter I got a postcard in the mail about buying Portsmouth Spartan Chicago Bears beer stein commemorating the championship game in 32. And a week later, Glenn Presnell was at my house. I don't know how that happened. It was an act of God. Things just went right for Glenn. Glenn was a man of faith, and things just went accordingly with Glenn,
Yeah.
So, Will, tell me a little bit about Portsmouth, because you own a business there. What's the business?
It's Salt the River. It's a steak and rib and chicken restaurant, mainly known for the steaks. And Glenn and my dad, my dad's been gone since Father's Day of last year, but Glenn wanted the dining room to be a commemorative of the Spartans, and my dad agreed with him, and they set it up as such. And that is actually where I met Tom Eurich.
Oh, is it? Okay, that's great.
Well, actually, it was the second time, because the first time I was in the river was with Bob Morton, and you weren't there. And I went down. His restaurant is fabulous. If there's one picture,
I've heard about it. I heard it's like,
and that's River, Ribber.
And I went down the aisle and I said, "Gee, I interviewed him, and I think the waitresses thought I was crazy, but it was an actual fact." And then the second time, I was with Mr. Morton again, and I went to pay my bill, at the bar, and Will was there, and that's how we met. And it's been inseparable ever since, Will. And I want to thank you because what you've done is fabulous down there.
We tried to keep him a secret
Tom,
coming on here, Tom. We wanted to surprise you.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, it's great to see. It's great to be on the show with you fellas, I tell you.
So, Will, but tell me a little
really
bit about Portsmouth and it being a sports town, especially a football town, because Detroit, I mean, that's part of the reason why we're doing the podcast is because 1935 in the Lions and that they were victorious and that so many teams in the city were victorious that year is forgotten. But it seems like the Spartans are still alive and well in Portsmouth.
Yeah, the memory. Portsmouth was an industrial town back when it was industrial, and it came down to Green Bay was agricultural, and Green Bay outlasted the Spartans during the Depression because they were agricultural, I'm told, and that's why Green Bay survived. But the Spartans stay alive in Detroit. They're the Detroit Lions today.
Yes.
We cheer for the Lions.
And Portsmouth also has the stadium that the Spartans play.
Yeah, there are
and
stadiums still exist.
And that stadium is like the cool. Yeah, Tom's got the shirt on right now. He's showing it up.
This is the shirt that I ran at Spartan Stadium Universal. I was so proud of that. I exercised, went up to 100 and 100 back. And
you did a 100-yard dash,
and I was thinking, "Gee, Red Grange is on this field."
Yeah, I mean that's what's so great about that field. That's what's so great about that field. Can you throw up a shot of the current shot of the stadium? Because the current stadium is you just type in Universal.
Yeah, I did.
Portsmouth Spartans, 1933.
Portsmouth Spartan Stadium. Just type in that. But the Portsmouth Spartan Stadium because I was down in Portsmouth. And that stadium is just like, I mean, it is as nostalgic as you get. I mean, I can't imagine that there's anything else in the country. I can't imagine that there's anything else in the country that is like a nostalgic leather helmet football field than that Portsmouth Stadium.
Yeah. And when you're a little kid, when you're a young kid and you're playing on that field, you know the history. And
the high school team
they're telling you about the history of that stadium. And at least mine did. And you go out on that field and you think you're out there where all those greats have played, and you might be 10 years old, and there you are.
Yeah, I mean the high school team plays out on that still, don't they?
Yeah, Notre Dame high school still does. Portsmouth Trojans high school team used to.
Yeah, what a great
Notre Dame Titans still do.
Do you have one of the brick siding on there? Is there a picture of the brick siding?
So we got the stadium.
So we got
there.
the stadium shown on the screen right now for anybody.
Back memories.
Yep. So that's the interior of the stadium. The outside is outside's my favorite. I love the brick because the brick is like this like gray.
Yep. So there's the exterior.
Yeah. There's like the exterior. I mean, it looks like that. You can just see that is like straight out of the 30s. It's just such and Portsmouth has done such a great job. They do a barbecue, I think, every year. That am I mistaken? What do they have? Wasn't there a barbecue?
There was a barbecue last year. You're exactly
a fundraiser.
Right. Blues and Brews.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. You need some fundraiser to keep care. Yeah, that's great.
I was there. Yeah, it was a great time.
So I think you answered the question already. But so who do people in Portsmouth cheer for?
Well, they cheer for a little bit of everybody, but they do cheer for the Lions. Okay. I think everybody has a little piece of the Lions in their heart.
Yeah, that's cool.
So,
no, that's
we've got Cincinnati Bengal fans. The Bengals have visited our restaurant, The River, and we've got Cleveland Brown fans, Pittsburgh Steeler fans, but overall, I'd say everybody's somewhat of a Detroit Lion fan because of the Spartan connection.
And one of the things that I thought was interesting at Portsmouth, because I was one of the things I was trying to do was bring professional baseball in there because you guys the baseball stadium there is just so cool. I love it. I love that. The baseball park there was built by, or it was Branch Rickey somehow arranged to build the park. It was built in 1935, right after the Lions left. And it's just a beautiful little baseball park. But one of the things that I was down there when I was, looking into, Portsmouth is there's just, besides the Lions and the Spartans, there's a ton of just all these, there's connections between Detroit and Portsmouth. it's kind of the strangest thing because it's like what is it, like a 8-hour drive from Portsmouth?
Less than
How many
that.
miles is
It's
that?
less than that. It's
Something
about-
like that.
It's about 280 miles.
So maybe like
It's
7 hours, something like that. But the strangest
291 miles
Okay.
from Portsmouth to Detroit.
Yeah, but the strange thing is that there's a ton of cities between here and there, and there's a ton of cities within an 8-hour range from Detroit and to the west or to the east or whatever. And it's just the strangest thing because I was actually really looking into Portsmouth, as a connection for like a baseball, to do something, modern pro baseball there. And there was so many different connections. Like there's just the people from Detroit's name pop up there for stuff that has nothing to do with the Spartans and the Lions or whatever. And it was just really, it was just odd to me that it was like that there was there has been like a connection with Detroit and Portsmouth for a long time. Not besides just this. It's weird.
Well, when I read the book, I was so proud that on the first introduction to the Lions, you have the picture of Portsmouth players playing in the stadium.
Sure.
And you brought Portsmouth in. You could have started with 1934
Sure.
when the Lions started, and everybody would have thought, well, gee, they were just a built-up team.
Yeah.
But you included Spartans.
Well, absolutely,
and Portsmouth. Yeah. And what I was telling Will is, believe it or not, Portsmouth and Detroit were sister cities.
Well, that's what I'm trying to figure out. I've never really got a satisfactory answer to that question. Like, why is there that sisterness between? I mean, like I say, they're 8 hours away. There's where is that connection?
When I was down there on my first visit, I ran the field, and then when I went off, there was a sign there that said the Spartans left and went to Detroit.
Yeah,
but the sign didn't say like they went and added to Detroit to the city of champions, and they won a championship. The people in Portsmouth, most of them don't know just what encompassed when those 12 players left. And they joined the team.
No, I get that, but you see what I'm saying? Like, there's other connections. I wish I had the examples to list in front of me, but
work. People left Portsmouth to go to Detroit to work.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, I can see that.
Well,
there was that connection.
Yeah,
well, that's
but
true
just
too, Will.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, there's just it seemed like when I was doing that research thing, there was just so many different little things that were sort of connected, and so I did find out a couple of things. Well, it was really kind of interesting things that Portsmouth set the world record for. There was 2 world records, Guinness Book of World Records set in Portsmouth in the last couple of years. Yeah, you had the largest number of Christmas What was the largest number of Christmas carolers?
Well, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, the largest number of Christmas carolers ever assembled. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then what was the second one? Tell me this. Remind me. It was the
What was the second one, Davey?
oh
gosh, you.
Oh, the large. I got it right now. I got it. It's the large. It was the large. What was the largest? I'm sorry. Go ahead. Hit me with it. Do you have it, Will?
No, I don't.
It was the second one. I hate to put you on the spot. Sorry about that. It's I think it was the largest.
Largest number of Lions fans?
No. It was. I thought it was the largest number of like there was a big street cleanup or something. I think that something like the largest number of potted plants. That's what it was.
Yeah.
Everybody turned out to plant like flowers and plants to decorate the entire downtown, and it was like the largest number all at one time. I just thought I was like, damn, like
most people potting plants.
Most people potting plants, and I thought it was cool because both of those things are community efforts. You know what I mean? That you actually have to get people geared up to turn out to do something. And I just thought those were just really cool.
They also set the world gift wrapping record as well.
Oh, really? When? Recently?
Gift wrapping. All right.
Was it recently?
They got carolers, they got planting.
Was that
and they
recently?
I don't know.
Oh, okay. But I'm saying like that. So I love Portsmouth. I love the spirit out there. You guys, it's like I said, I'm glad to have that. I'm glad there's that connection between Detroit because I think we got a lot of I think there's substance out in this area too, and you got Portsmouth's got substance and. I'm glad to kind of bring that out.
We've got some history. We do.
Yeah, 2019 they set a record.
There you go. See, that's awesome.
1,482 gifts.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's what I'm saying though. It's like it's just cool. Like those are community like mobilization efforts, and it's cool. Like I say, I enjoy every person I met from there has been great.
Hey, thanks for acknowledging that, guys. I appreciate that. That's very nice.
Well, I highly recommend. All people to go to Portsmouth for a trip because it's fabulous, and by all means stop into the river because you're going to see pictures there and take the little ones because you'll see pictures they can't believe of all the Spartans and the Lions.
Yeah. That's great.
Well, I used to make my trek to Dearborn, and I would watch Ohio State play Michigan, and if I was lucky, I would catch the Lions play the next day. And I was talking about faith, and I was in Dearborn, and I went to a Michigan-Ohio State game. The next day, I went to a San Francisco-Detroit Lion game. And guess who they brought out at halftime in the Model T and honored? And I had no idea it was going to happen. Glenn Presnell.
Oh, did they really? That's awesome.
Really? What year was that? What year was that, Will?
It was back in the 90s. I don't remember what year it was.
You say they brought him out in a Model T?
But I don't know why
some
they
kind
chose
of
the Model T, but they brought him out in the Model T, and he had on a new Detroit Lions jersey, and they honored him at halftime.
Wow.
I remember Barry Sanders was still playing for the Lions at that time.
Whoa.
And, yeah, that was pretty special because I had no idea that my friend was going to be honored at halftime in that game.
Yeah, what a coincidence, too. You're like, did you see him like across the yard the next day and go, hey, nice, I saw you on the game the other day, you know?
that is, I never knew that, Will. That is fabulous.
Yeah, that is cool.
Yeah.
That had to have been early 90s, mid-90s, I would imagine, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
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 Wow. So anything else off the like sort of the like top of your head that pops up about Glenn? Like, sort of a wild card story or anything?
No, it'd be tough to top that story.
Yeah, you're right. That's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah. But no, I enjoy. We used to go to a restaurant in Dearborn called the Topper.
The
Topper.
Yep.
The Top.
Yep.
So, Will, in your dealings with Glenn, I lost where I was going with that. Good guy. Why do you think he settled back where he settled? Why do you think he came back to Ohio? Because he was like, wasn't he like Nebraska or something like that?
He was born in Nebraska. Yeah.
Yeah.
Why do you think he came back to Ohio?
Well, he went to Kentucky to start with, and he was EKU athletic director and football coach, and one of his star players was Lee Majors.
Oh, okay.
All right.
$6 million man.
$6 million man, yeah.
Wow.
Glenn, I don't know. Glenn was just special. Glenn was special whether he was on the football field. It wouldn't have mattered where Glenn was. Glenn was just a special person, you know.
Well, Tom talked a little bit about on the last one about how these players, even after they'd come to Detroit, that there was still an affinity between them and Portsmouth.
Yeah.
And like, even like at the party, like when he first walked up to the table, there's two tables, in fact, and in like the group of players that had played together in Portsmouth all sat at one table. And the other table was like sort of like they call them like the new guys, you know, like even though it was 50 years later, they're like, oh, those are the new guys from 1934, 35 when they were, you know, when they came to Detroit, it was guys that never played with them in Portsmouth. So there was still sort of that, there was
two teams. There was really the Detroit Lions and the Portsmouth Spartans. And you could see that when I went to the reunion. And talking to the Spartans, they really, coming to Detroit, there was only 12 of them. They didn't know who they were going to play with. They didn't have a field, and they felt so sorry for the ones left behind.
Yeah,
that was a tragedy.
Yeah,
story.
But they still had that same kind of. But they still had that. I guess I'm trying to answer the question about why he end up back in Portsmouth, back in Ohio, Glenn Presnell, because for a lot of these guys, this was like that special point in their lives, man. They they really attached themselves to that area.
Well, didn't Glenn live in Ironton?
Yes.
Oh, so he moved back to Ironton. Yeah. That's what I mean. Like, even better. Yeah.
Yeah, he was in Ironton.
That's cool.
And one of his players too was Coach Miller, who coached Wheelersburg High School, and Coach Miller won a few state championships in Ohio himself, and he was one of Glenn's players at EKU. Yeah.
No, am I mistaken? Is that stadium that the Ironton Tanks used to play in? Is it still in Ironton? Is it still up?
Yeah.
Is it? Yeah, that's awesome. And the original bleachers are still there and everything? Those concrete bleachers?
I'm pretty sure of that, yes.
Yeah, that might be a tougher photo to find. I don't know if that's on there. But
Will, when did Glenn go to Ironton? When he left Portsmouth, he lived in Detroit for a while, and then he moved back to Ironton. Is that the story of his trail?
And, well, like I said, he was at EKU, Eastern Kentucky University, in Kentucky as their athletic director and coach. That's where he coached Lee Majors and Coach Miller. I don't know the timeline, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Tom,
Well, Well, so I wanted to lead back in a little bit to what we were talking about, sort of at the beginning, is like really to, maybe to shed a little light on the like what type of player Glenn Presnell was. And we talked about, like, set for a second earlier on, like the Deion Sanders, like the offense and defense. But Glenn Presnell, I think, was even like, Deion was fantastic. Deion was phenomenal. He was offense and defense. That's true. But back then, they literally played both ways. Literally that was the game. You literally played both ways, and it wasn't like like in Glenn Presnell, what he excelled at was everything. I mean, he was a runner, he was a passer, he was an elite defensive back. He kicked I talked about it, the other show. He kicked the longest field goal in NFL history in 1934.
Who broke that? Dempsey broke that field goal record.
Well, yeah, so it lasted for 17 years, that record did, and then it didn't get broken by the Lions until 1995 by Jason Hansen. I mean, that's how long it lasted.
Crazy.
Their first year, Presnell sets the all-time record, and we actually have a photo, which I would think you guys are going to get a kick out of. I actually had this in my book we brought in for the show.
Oh, yeah, there you are.
Yeah, so this is the actual, these are photos. And I don't want to say this is the actual kick, but they kind of advertised it in the newspaper as the actual kick. They didn't say whether it was or not, but it came out the week after this photo. So I don't know if this was somewhat staged or whatever, but the top one definitely was, because there's nobody, they're not facing anybody, but you can see how he's like, there's a little dotted line that shows Presnell. This comes out of a newspaper, so it's kind of grainy. But he's booting the ball, and they have a little arrow on top of the dotted line saying 54 yards. You see, it's like, the distance is way deep. And then I know it's really very small and probably impossible to read for anybody, but the little text at the bottom, it's a story by Potsy Clark. And Potsy Clark, one of the things that was so cool about him, we did 4 episodes on Potsy Talk. The episodes were the genius of George Potsy Clark. And one of the coolest things about Potsy was, it was that besides like his role as a coach, basically a general manager, was that he was a teacher. Like, he loved to teach football. Like, he wrote a book, like How to Play Football. He wrote like the article that you see right there, the little small text that's, like I said, impossible to read. Is a story of him talking about how that they had kicked this, and to summarize the story, he was like, sure enough, Glenn had the leg, Glenn had the accuracy, Glenn did the kick, but it took 11 men to make this happen. And I'm going to tell you how, and so he was like, these 2 guys had to block the outside, these 2 guys had to block the inside, and these 2 guys worked together. So he was like, and so at the very the culmination of his description is Glenn made the kick, but the team made it, possible, it was a team success as much as it was a Glenn Presnell success. So that was, that's that Potsy element. But so like I say, Glenn this was the 3rd game of the season. They beat Green Bay 3-0 with this 54-yard touchdown field goal. And it set the all-time record in their 3rd week as a franchise.
Amazing.
That lasts until 1995. That's just I mean, you can't make this stuff up.
It's unbelievable that, like I said last week, how they ever got a team on the field in 1934.
And then were incredible
all
once
the
they
disarray
did.
they had, and they were trying to help the Portsmouth Spartans left behind, try to find them a job, because if to play football, and if not, they had to be in the unemployment line.
Yeah.
And the sadness in those players were telling me, it was just unbelievable. And like I said last week, they put a little P under there when they played the championship game. That was to remind of the people left behind for the Portsmouth players.
That's what I mean. They had that
Those
attachment. That was this was a precious time in their lives. I mean, you can see it. I mean,
it was a precious time to me during the time that I knew Glenn. Glenn, like I said, he treated everybody like family. The Portsmouth family, the Ironton family. He loved everybody. He was friends with everybody. Glenn never met a stranger.
And he lived to be 90. Didn't he live to be like, was it 99 when he passed?
99, and I was hoping he'd make it to 100, because 100 yards on a football field.
Oh, yeah.
So, he made it to 99. Yeah. Yeah.
So, Charles, you pulled down a couple of images out of the book. What else did you pull down that you wanted to share with us today?
I mean, which
there was one other
I
one.
sent you like 5 or 6, I think.
4.
Oh, was it 4?
Mm-hmm.
I missed
And
four, 6, somewhere in there.
So there was the first one that picture accompanied the story that you read earlier.
Yeah, so we got a
So
photo
the
up on
book.
screen. It's a great shot of Glenn Presnell in 1927 as a Nebraska All-American.
Wow, 1927.
Yeah, and then the
But I love that. I'll go back to that real quick.
Yeah.
The reason I love that there's this a lot of times modern day fans, they look back at the 30s and they see these guys, and especially a lot of times the film, the speed of the film is sped up, so the guys are just running around super fast, and you can't, and the guys look smaller than they do today, and it's a lot of times modern day fans kind of overlook. The players in the 30s, they were smaller. They wore leather helmets. That was like an archaic age.
I don't want this guy coming at me.
But that's what I'm saying. Look at this. That's what I love about this picture. Look at this picture at Glenn Presnell.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy, this is a guy that looks like he was a center block.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this guy's a halfback quarterback, plays offense, defense. I mean, special teams. That's just, that's the part of the game. Especially, they didn't call it special teams back then. That was just like the part of the game,
teaches science in the off-season.
And teaches science in the off-season. Yeah. So, I mean, that's what I'm saying. This guy, he just looks like he's made of granite. This doesn't look like, anybody that questions this idea that football is the 30s were that was archaic era, whatever.
Super.
Yeah, play both ways on offense and defense. And, back in the 30s, this guy, he did not, in his peak, this is a guy that, you know what I mean? He's going to run somebody over or something,
You know who he looks like? Doak Walker.
Yeah.
Oh.
He looks almost like Doak Walker.
Yeah, but he is, in either case, he is solid. And so anyways, yeah, that's why I love that photo, because it's got him. And this is a great little shot we have here. This is a 1934 Game 5 program cover with Glenn Presnell on it.
Oh, is that?
Yep. And then I actually have a little text in the bottom. It says, on this day, Presnell ran for a touchdown to finish a fourth quarter drive that had started when he intercepted a pass from from the Boston quarterback. So he sets. So that was a little note about that game. So he that's just one little example. He intercepts a pass on one end of the field, and then runs for the touchdown on the other end. This is a whole different game back then.
Yeah, playing both sides of the ball.
You're playing
regularly.
both sides. Exactly. It's a totally. That's what I mean. Not to say that football, I think is, I think it's a great sport. I love watching it. But it's just a different style of game. When you got a guy that on one side he gets the interception, the other side, I mean, it's incredible.
Well, you want to remember in 34 they could only allow 25 players.
Yeah. So smaller rosters.
And when players went down, Dutch Clark even went in when they were playing Pittsburgh, the Pirates.
Yeah.
They had injuries. Dutch Clark went in and played.
Yeah, they played. Yeah, that's right. Well, Dutch played defense when he was in there too. He played both ways all the time. Dutch was a phenomenal defender. Yeah, they both played. Yeah, but there's he's a defensive back, quarterback, halfback. He's whatever the team needs him to be. And so, anyways, I love that little program cover. It's a great little. That's from their first season, Game 5. And then
I'm told that the Spartans back when they were the Spartans, they stayed with the residents. During practices.
Oh, sure.
And some,
Well, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I can see that. I mean, they're trying to save money. I mean, it was they were all in the middle of the Great Depression. It was a tough spot.
All the teams in the 34 were in very tough shape.
Yeah.
There was only 13 teams.
Yeah, they're all in tough shape. So, what else we got, Tom? Is that?
Yeah. There was this one that you pulled down.
Oh, yeah. This is some photos in action. You see, this is a 1934. We have a shot with Glenn Presnell. He's breaking up a pass and who was the guy? Bill Hewitt. So this is Bill Hewitt. We talked about him briefly. He's a Chicago Bears end that's in the Hall of Fame. He was one of the last guys that never wore a helmet. And there's a photo at the top here where Presnell is just mugging him. He's breaking up a pass from behind, he's reaching both arms around Bill Hewitt's neck to break the pass up. And so I just it's such a great little, it's obviously from a newspaper, it's pretty grainy, but you get the idea. Bill Hewitt was much larger than him.
Yep. We're still here. It's just
so the bottom photo is a picture from a 1936. This is a tradition that's really lost on today that it doesn't happen anymore. This is a whole nother story into itself. which is so the bottom photo is Presnell carrying the ball on offense, and it comes from 1936 after the Lions had won that first championship, and in this case they were playing against the college all-stars. Because the tradition is that there was in Chicago, this is a big Chicago, I think it was Chicago Tribune event. And what it was that whatever NFL team won the championship would face off in Chicago in sort of like a preseason game against the college all-stars.
Okay.
So all these like all-stars from college, so it'd be a big game against it was almost like we were talking about like the Lions had that tryout with the varsity versus JV. Or varsity versus freshman. It's sort of similar. Like, how cool would that be today if you had a college all-star game against the Patriots or something like that to see how these guys stood up?
The last game played was 1958, and it was Detroit Lions played the college all-stars.
Okay, you do remember it then, Tom. Okay, good. So I didn't realize it lasted that long.
I watched that game on television.
So how competitive was it?
The college all-stars beat the world champion Lions.
Really? Are you serious?
Yes, they beat them.
So that's because I read a few things in there, in the past briefly. I didn't do too deep of a dive into the college all-star game, but I saw a couple other losses, and I think the Lions tied in 36. I forgot the score off the top of my head, but I think they might have tied. But there was a couple other losses mixed in. I mean, there was the college all-stars were good. Like every year there would be a challenge.
Great teams. I mean, the best there was in college.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. I wonder why I just wonder why that tradition went away, because it was regular. If you're talking about it in 1958, and this is 36, and it was already a regular tradition at this point. They'd been doing it for at least 5 years, leading into 36.
Probably they decided to drop it.
They decided. But I'm wondering why, because to me that would be football is any type of unique element in sports to be huge, and to me it seems like something that. Would draw a lot of fans.
There's probably that competitive edge about getting into the world of advertising and
but the
NFL, who gets the money and
but the NFL kind of uses college as like their developmental league anyways.
Oh yeah,
that's where the players come from college and they go to the NFL through the draft. And that's what I'm saying. Like, why not do a game in which you actually get a chance to see guys that might be first, second, third round draft picks playing against an NFL, champions, and see how they actually play. So I just think that so that's why I love that photo. That actually comes from that 36 All-Star versus Lions. So
what else did you have in your bag of tricks there for us, Charles?
Well, I wanted to sort of keep on talking about the idea of the versatility of Presnell. Offense, defense. And so just a sort of a little overview of his career, sort of just a quick timeline. So 1927 All-American with Nebraska, as we already talked about. 1929 to 30 Ironton Tanks beat the Giants and Bears. And then we've talked about it in numerous other episodes with the story of the Spartans. 1931 is Potsy Clark's first year. He brings Presnell over from Ironton. And so 31, 32, we've talked about Portsmouth pretty extensively with that, with the finish of the season at that first NFL championship game. And then at the end of 32, we mentioned Dutch Clark retired, leaving Presnell the sole quarterback on the team and the number one star. And so 1933, it's Presnell that leads the NFL in scoring with 64 points. All right, so this is just to give you an idea of the type of statistics he had back then. 118 carries for 522 yards. That's fourth in the league. With 6 rushing touchdowns. That's number 1. 47 completions. 47 pass completions on 125 attempts for 774 yards. That's number 2 in the NFL with 4 touchdowns. And then 5 field goals, tied with Chicago's Jack Manders and New York Giants' Ken Strong for number 1 in the league. So without Dutch,
just a renaissance man.
Yeah. So without Dutch there, he's doing all these things. And so in 34, of course they moved to Detroit, and Dutch Clark. I'm sorry, Dutch Clark is back, and so now he's in a rotation with Dutch Clark. And so in 1934, Presnell finishes third in scoring with 63 points, which is just 1 point what he had less than the previous season. Mm-hmm. So 63 points, and he's third in scoring behind Jack Manders, who was number 1 with 76 points. And then number 2 was Dutch Clark with 73.
Okay.
So his own teammate is the second most scoring guy in the NFL and so he's third behind his own teammate, Dutch Clark. And so he has 117 rushes for 413 yards, 7 touchdowns. 13 of 57 passing for 236 yards and 2 touchdowns. I keep on, there's a bunch of stuff. Like I say, we talk about the field goal in 1934, against the Packers.
Yep.
And then 35, this is sort of why I wanted to do this rundown. I hate to do a bunch of stats and numbers and stuff like that.
Right.
But it was to really to build up into 35 and sort of to kind of, lead off towards the end of the show. Because the 35 season really paints a picture for how cool, for how great he was.
Yeah.
So 1935, he had 28 points. Okay. So we've already talked about briefly as we ran down the list here. We talked about 63 points in 34, 65 points, 63 points in 34, 64 points. So he has 28 points, half the number in 35. Okay. And so that is because he is injured in game 5. Okay. So he's in. So Glenn Presnell incurs an injury of a fractured vertebrae. Okay. In the game 5 in his neck. Okay. He fractures a vertebrae in his neck in the game 5 of the season. So, I don't know much about doctoring or science or whatever, biology, but I do know that doesn't sound good.
Nope.
A fractured vertebrae in a game in which you're, it sounds like a pretty rough. So they tell him, so the doctors tell him, everybody tells him, at the very least, you're going to miss the next 6 games.
Shake it off, man. Shake it off.
Yeah, there's no shaking off a fractured vertebrae in your neck.
Yeah, no.
So the doctors tell him, he says he's told that he's going to miss at the very least the next 6 games. So what that does, that puts him coming back with if he's lucky with 1 game left in the season, if he's lucky, okay? He's back in 4 games. So he's back in 4 games. He doesn't miss 6. He doesn't miss a minimum of 6. He's back in 4 games.
Fast healer.
Yeah, or this is a guy that's tough as nails. That's my neck's a little sore, but I can, he's gonna play through the pain of a fractured vertebrae, right? So anyway, he comes back in 4. At the moment he comes back, we've done an entire, at least one episode talking about this.
Yeah.
But so I'm going to set the picture for maybe a viewer that's new or whatever. Is the idea that so this was the situation that the Lions found themselves in 1935, their first championship. We talk about the 34 Lions and how they start off 7 games. They weren't scored upon in 7 games. They won their first 10 straight games, and then they faded at the end of the year to the Bears and Packers. Right. So they got knocked out of any potential of going to the championship, which was another in a string of just near misses of getting to the NFL championship and winning the NFL championship that this group of players had been through. Yeah. And so in 1935, the Lions start out awful. They start out awful. And then literally at the very moment that the big pressure for them was that the Detroit Tigers, who they had come to one of the reasons they'd even come to the city was because of the Detroit Tigers, was to they were named the Lions because of the Tigers. They're trying to seize the sports enthusiasm of the Tigers. And so now in 1935, whereas the Tigers are winning the World Series, the Lions are in last place. And they've got and not only are they in last place, but they just took the worst beating of their entire history against the Green Bay Packers. It was 31-7 or 31-6, whatever it was. So they just come off of the worst beating they ever took, 31-6. Against the Green Bay Packers, and they were in last place. The Tigers are just wrapping up the World Series or thereabouts, right about that same moment. Mm-hmm. And facing them is 4 games remaining. Okay, they got to go back and play the Packers after they just got thrashed by them, 31-6. Then they got to go play the Bears twice, who they had not beaten since 1931. And then they got to beat the Brooklyn Dodgers, who had beaten them earlier in the season to start the year.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah. You're spoiling it by saying that, Jamie. So they got to come back and beat the Brooklyn Dodgers at that. They got to go undefeated. At the very least, they cannot lose. And even if they win them all, they still need help. Other teams have to get beaten and such just to have even a chance. But they know that this is. That the Tigers had just won the World Series, and if they did not do something relevant, that this team could have gone into the dustbin just like 3 previous NFL attempts had done before them. And so this was, this was not, they talk about nowadays, the same old Lions. This was not that group. No. This was a group that had been together for a long time, as we've talked about. Their history has a tremendous history of these people together. And this is a group that, and this is the moment that Presnell comes back. Okay, like that's what I'm saying. That's why he's like such a cool story with this, because he comes back, so he returns in 4, and he returns. So he missed the second Packers game, which the Lions did win, but he comes back in time to face the Bears. In which we talked about in our previous episode was like I read a quote from they had 2 games in a row against the Bears, and the first game against the Bears was like one of the most brutal games that I've ever read about. Like they were talking about guys getting hauled off on stretchers, guys get fist fights all through the game. Like, I mean, like the article, the quote that is from the story of there's all these different games to read about, but this one particular game, is like, because the Lions are up against the wall. They know they're not like, they've not beaten the Bears since 1931. They want a piece of the Bears, and they know that their season's on the line. And so they're literally playing like a lion against the wall. And by all accounts, this is the most rugged, battle that this team had like ever faced, and they tied. Right? They tied this first game against the Bears, and that was the first game that Presnell comes back, from this fractured vertebrae, and he's part of this mauling type of rolling type of a game, and so they tie that first game. And so the next game, this is really for the marbles, because the ties don't count for a loss or a win, but they need to get some wins to pick up to generate some points in the win column. And so the second game against the Bears is the Lions' first Thanksgiving Day game. All right. And so in that game, the Lions, spoiler alert, Jamie, that's your cue there.
Yeah, spoiler.
The Lions win that first Thanksgiving. It was the second game in their history, the second Thanksgiving game, but it was their first victory. Right. And the Lions win. And in the course of this action, Glenn Presnell in the first quarter has a 40-yard punt return. He also has a game-clinching interception in his own end zone in the fourth quarter. Nice. So that gives you an example. Like here, he has on one side returning a punt, and on the other side, he's getting an interception to close out the game. But it's the final game against Brooklyn, which you really see sort of the the versatility here, because this is the final game. Like this is the game they got to win. They're playing against their old friend Father Lumpkin, who we've talked about, and Lumpkin is now with the Dodgers, and Lumpkin had helped the Dodgers beat the Lions earlier in the season, and so they got to win this game. And so in this game, the final game, Presnell catches a 20-yard pass from Ace Katowski. He kicks a 36-yard field goal. He intercepts a pass, which he ran back 37 yards to set up a touchdown by Ace Katowski. You see what I'm saying? Like, this guy is doing everything, man. He's like deep, like literally doing everything.
That's amazing. So, Will, when he was living next door to you, did this persona come through?
Let me clear something up. Glenn was not actually my neighbor. Glenn was my neighbor in that he lived one town over.
Oh, fair play.
Oh, okay.
Fair
so
play.
you met him. I got you. Okay. I thought he was like literally just lived across the street from here or something.
Well, he visited Portsmouth a lot. Like I said, he loved Portsmouth, and he loved Ironton, and he just loved the people in the area.
Yeah.
And he was one of us, and
But that's what's cool, man. Like, and that's what I'm saying. So, like, the idea that he, fell in love with Portsmouth and Ironton in his football playing days. I mean, it's not even a stretch. It's not. I mean, that he would, that's the reason. One of the reasons, certainly, that he came back to live there, because why else would he choose, of all the cities in the world, why would he choose to go back to Ironton or Portsmouth? It's because he developed that bond while he was there in the early days. What other conclusion could there be?
He would really approve, and he would really appreciate this show immensely. He wanted to keep the memory alive of the Spartans. That was one of the reasons he wanted our dining room to have the history in it with the pictures and stuff.
Sure.
Well, he wanted to keep that memory alive.
Well, just let you know, Will, I'm not sure if I told you before, but I wrote a screenplay for a movie on this entire subject. I've got it.
Right?
Yeah, it's like imagine Band of Brothers. You've seen Band of Brothers? Have you guys all seen Band of Brothers? So it's basically, I wrote it in the same style as Band of Brothers, where it's like an action. It's first of all, it's a 9-part miniseries. And basically it's similar to Band of Brothers, in which the action is what sort of drives forward the movie. It's not like, somebody just sitting in their house going, oh, I wonder what I'm doing or whatever. It's not like a drama or something. This is an action packed. And so it's like, I call it a sports version of Band of Brothers. And of course, the Lions story starts out in Portsmouth. That's where that's where I set the very the beginning of the Lions episode begins in Portsmouth. So I'm just saying, how cool would it be? I'm a dreamer, man. I'm a dreamer, but I like to think the dreams like lead to something potential. But imagine just a dream. Imagine how cool it'd be if when we make this movie, okay, and we film. Well, yeah, we're gonna bring Presnell back. Of course, he's one of the main characters. The arc of the story of the Lions is the dynamic between Dutch Clark and Glenn Presnell. Yeah. But what I think would be how awesome would it be is if we film that movie on location in Portsmouth Stadium, Universal Stadium. Yeah. How cool would that be, man? Like, I mean, why not? Like, where else would you film it?
No.
Where else? I mean, you've got literally the stadium still there.
It's still an NFL
like
stadium.
any 1930s movie you ever want to do, whether it's college football or anything, where else would you film it? And so, but in this particular case,
it's a beautiful setting there, I must say.
Yeah, but as I'm saying, in this particular case, like, it's even more appropriate. It's like literally the place they played, still in perfect state of preservation.
So we got to wrap it up. But Tom, any last thoughts on Presnell?
Well, I saw him at the table, and my saddest moment was that when he left the reunion halftime, or when he went, that was my first choice to interview, because I talked to him a little bit at the table, and I wanted him to really tell him how he picked the colors for the Lions up in G.A. Richards' office, up in the Fisher building.
Yeah.
I guess Richards had a bunch of uniforms, and Glenn went, that's the one.
Yeah.
No presentation.
And
that's it.
And I have another story that in the books about that moment, and I actually forget where I got the information from, but it was like sort of an oral account from somebody that I met along the way. That was on good authority. I forget who it was. But there was another story that said that Richards has actually showed his daughter as well, and that she also picked the color, basically reinforcing Glenn Presnell's choice for the colors. Like, he showed it to, it was like, what do you think about this? And she's like, that's it, so there was, so he identified it, and then there's no telling how many people that he ran it past. But the initial color selection was Presnell. You know what I mean? And
all right, Will, last thoughts.
I think Glenn had been in Hawaii before. It's Hawaii blue, right?
Yeah, Hawaiian. Yeah, Hawaiian. Yeah,
I think Glenn had been in Hawaii, but prior to that,
really,
all right,
and his wife. Yeah,
so he still had that Hawaiian.
I might be mistaken. I'm getting older myself.
I'm going with it, Will. I'm sticking
with
the story.
It, Will. Yeah, you brought it out here for the first time. Because he was in Hawaii. That's what makes a lot of sense to me. Makes sense to me.
Gentlemen, thank you for hanging out tonight. Will, thanks for taking the time.
It's great to see you, Will. Thanks for joining, man. I'm really glad you jumped on today.
I love you guys. I appreciate it.
We appreciate you too.
Glenn would too. He's looking down and smiling at us right now. I appreciate it. Thanks,
Tom. Once again, absolutely an honor to have you with us here, sharing a microphone with a seasoned professional like you. I appreciate it. So, all right, Detroit City of Champions, DetroitCityOfChampions.com. Like, follow, subscribe. We appreciate everybody taking time with us. Charles, thanks for everything
always
you do.
Always my. I look forward to Thursday every week.
Matt Fox making everything happen in the booth.
I'm just pushing buttons, man.
I'm Jamie, and Detroit City of Champions. We'll see you next time.